Welcome to the Energy for Life podcast, helping busy women reclaim their energy, innate power, and self-worth. Here is your host, Corona Brady.
Welcome back. Welcome to the Divorce series. This is a new segment which is part of my Energy for Life podcast show. And by the way, I just want to say thank you so much for those of you who responded both publicly and privately to my question that I put out on social media yesterday about creating this series. I've had such an overwhelming response, and it's just really inspiring to see so many of you wanting to learn and understand more about this topic, which, by the way, can be a pretty loaded, triggering topic. And just know that everything I share, I always share from a space of my own personal integrated experience. And like everything in life, I really encourage you to take what resonates from this series and then just leave the rest. So I want to check in here today because I'm sensing you're wanting to know more about this topic because of maybe one of a couple of reasons. You're navigating an incredibly painful separation or divorce right now, and perhaps you're wondering if there's another way, maybe even a better way, and you feel utterly lost. You actually don't know who you are anymore. Maybe you're having an identity crisis. Because now that your identity is not tied to your partner or the marriage, you feel lost. You are separated or divorced from your ex-partner maybe a long time. Maybe it's been years, perhaps even a decade or longer, but you know that you haven't fully let go. You know that you still feel bitter on some level. Or you still get incredibly emotional about it, or you're easily triggered by your ex-partner. Or I'm sensing that you're wanting to know more about this topic because right now, and maybe even for some time, you've been feeling dissatisfied and unhappy in your marriage. And it feels like maybe you've stopped growing together as a couple, or you're just no longer working together as a team. Maybe there has been a breakdown in communication, and then, of course, a lack of intimacy. Perhaps you're even sleeping in separate rooms. And it feels on many levels that you're like two flatmates living together. And so as a result of that, you've been feeling incredibly stuck and you're feeling really scared. And maybe you're just feeling so petrified at what to do because you know deep down that something needs to change, but you are so paralyzed in fear. Or I'm sensing you want to know about this topic because maybe you have a dear friend or a sister or a family member that's actually navigating a separation or divorce, but you haven't been through that yet. And you're wanting to maybe support them on some level. So just a little bit about me and why you might want to listen to me share about this topic. If you've been following my work for some time, because I have been working with and supporting women now coming up close to a decade. I cannot believe this. And thank you, by the way, if you have been a big follower of my work. But you may have noticed from my very honest and vulnerable sharings on my blog, newsletters, social media, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, that I like to keep things incredibly real. It's just who I am as a person. I'm a truth seeker. I'm a truth sharer. And you may have noticed that I've actually been on my own journey of massive personal growth for the past 18 plus months. And I've shared very openly and honestly about this, by the way, as well, if you've been a follower of my work. And I've separated from my ex-husband now, whom I was with for 18 years, close to 2 decades. So this was somebody I was with pretty much all of my adult life, and we separated 18 months ago. And here's what I know to be true. What I know to be true is that a separation and divorce is a very, very unique experience. And it brings with it so much opportunity for so much personal growth. And it can provide so much deep healing. And you won't know this until you've actually personally gone through this yourself. It's interesting how the universe works. Here's the really crazy thing. I've been running my Energy for Life Academy program, and some of you have been through this program, and it's a deep dive transformational group coaching program for women, busy professional women. And we do not sit on the surface in this program. This is really going deep. And I've been running this program now for over 4 years, and about 80 to 90%, this is the real statistics of the women that I've brought through this program. 80 to 90% of the women I've brought through this program over the last 4+ years have been divorcees, or they've been recently separated. And, I couldn't get my head around it. I couldn't understand at the time why I was attracting so many separated and divorced women. Little did I know at that time that I too would be walking that same path in the not so distant future. And I can now really see that the work I had been doing with supporting the hundreds and hundreds of women for years was in fact preparing me for my own separation and divorce. So here I am today, bearing my soul, choosing to show up courageously so that I can be vulnerable and I can be of service for you here today. So please, please, please do me a huge favor. If you know anyone right now that is navigating a painful separation or divorce, please can you just share this episode with them, because they might just need to hear what I have to share today. I've been blessed with a non-conflict separation and divorce, and I know that that's not normal and it's not the case for many. And I also chose to create a closing and ending marriage ceremony where I had my shamanic teacher and I had 3 really close friends be with me as I gave thanks for what the relationship had provided for me, gave thanks to my ex-partner, and I gave thanks for the learnings and the lessons, because there is always learnings and lessons in every single relationship. And I also spoke out loud my new intentions for the second part of my life that I was now stepping into. And I planted seeds into the earth, each seed representing what I was calling in. Now, I chose to leave my marriage for a number of reasons. I had been with my ex-partner for close to 2 decades. It's like nearly 20 years. And we were so young when we met. We had a lot in common when we met initially. We both had this great big desire to travel the world when we met. And we both had this love of music and dancing and clubbing. And let's just say we certainly had a lot of fun together in those 18 years. We spent the first 3 years of our relationship basically saving for a world trip, which took us on a one-way ticket from Ireland to South America, where we spent close to a year backpacking. And that really was one of the best and most magical and most adventurous years of my life yet. And then from South America, that took us to basically the complete opposite side of the world, the furthest point from Ireland to Australia, where I'm now living. And we chose at that time to create a life together. Little did I know that my path was going to drastically change, and that my clubbing and partying days would soon be over, and that would take me to really living a healthy, active lifestyle. And little did I know back then that I'd actually be doing the work that I'm doing today with empowering and supporting women, because back then I was working in a bank. And I'm very body sensitive, and I'm sharing this for a reason today, okay? So stick with me. I have a very sensitive body. I'm a deep feeler, and that just means that I can deeply feel. I can feel into the thoughts and feelings of those around me. Sometimes feeling others' pain more than my own. And why am I sharing this with you? Because maybe there is some gold and maybe there is some wisdom in this for you too today. I was in Mexico for a friend's wedding about 6 months prior to separating from my ex-husband. And this trip was incredibly awakening for me. I actually felt like a great big mirror was being held up for me during that trip. And it was really showing me the truth of my life, and that I had two paths that I had the choice of walking. And while I was in Mexico, I really started getting a lot of anxiety, to the point of having a couple of near panic attacks while I was there, while we were in the underground station. Nobody would have even known or sussed it at the time. I did share it with my ex-husband, and he was incredibly supportive. But if you've been a follower of my work for some time, you will know that I have a long history with anxiety, and I have managed to heal it and control it naturally. And it had been many years, though, since I had anxiety episodes like the ones I was experiencing in Mexico. So this was a bit of a red flag for me. And it had me be very curious about what my body was trying to communicate with me. And that is exactly what I brought to the anxiety, a real sense of curiosity. I started to just get to know my anxiety. I was talking to it. I was asking it what it wanted me to know and what it wanted me to understand. And the anxiety continued well after that trip in Mexico. I returned back to Sydney, and it just got louder and louder. But what I realized was my body was screaming at me at this point, and there were red flags, many red flags. And yes, maybe there were many well before this, but they had been maybe quite subtle. And the red flags that I was now receiving, they were not subtle. They were loud, they were fast, they were big, and they were scary. And I was feeling all kinds of sensations, just energy running through my body, and that I hadn't felt in a very, very long time. And I can even tell you that some I hadn't even felt before. And I'm sharing this with you today because your body never lies. Like my body never lies. And my body never has once let me down. And so I had to trust in what it was trying to communicate with me. And during this time, it was communicating to me as I got to know this anxiety, and I started to communicate with the anxiety on a deep level. It was communicating to me that my marriage was over and that I had to take the path of the courageous woman. I'm sharing my experience of this with you today for a reason. We don't just get anxious for no good reason. There's always something underneath that. The anxiety will have a message, always. But here's the thing. Can you get quiet enough through the busyness of your life? Can you get quiet enough so that you can understand its message? We don't fix the situation with a band-aid solution. That's not going to get to the root of the issue and heal it. And there's two ways that I personally feel you can choose to heal from divorce and separation. You can choose the first part, which is the part of avoidance of the real inner work. So this is where you choose to say, this is not happening to me, I'm fine, everything's fine. You keep yourself very busy, being busy, by not addressing the relationship and your part in that relationship, which means that you just push all those feelings of grief, loss, sadness, shame, anger, frustration. You stuff them down into your physical body. And we know what happens when we don't address these feelings in the body. After a period of time, this is how disease is formed. And if you choose this path, you just take all of that baggage, all of that weight to the next relationship, to the next marriage. You can choose to drink alcohol, you can choose to eat, you can choose to have sex, you can choose to jump into the next relationship, and you can choose to basically numb out and distract yourself from the real work that needs to happen. And if you choose this path, it's kind of what I spoke about yesterday on the show about instant gratification. It's that habit where you skip the short-term pain and instead you indulge in these very brief and fleeting pleasures that in the end, ultimately, they're going to result in long-term pain. In other words, you just find all kinds of reasons, all kinds of silly excuses not to do the work because of the pain that it creates at that moment, even though you know that this is the action that you need to take. And because here's the thing, you will have to face your separation, you will have to face your divorce at some point, and there is no better place than the present moment. And if you choose to take this first path of just avoidance of the real inner work, this is the path of fear. It is not the path of the courageous woman. And that takes me then to the second path that you can choose to take. And that's the path of choosing to doing the real inner work. This is where you look at your part in this relationship and you do what is required to heal and recover from this separation and the divorce, so you do not take this into your next relationship. This is the real part of the courageous woman. This is where you choose to not avoid the real inner work. You are 100% committed to doing the real inner work. And I've personally found, just through my own experience, okay, there's a lot of stuff that comes up around divorce, and I just have found through my own experience that this kind of divorcee stigma, it's really alive still. You're often seen as a failure to others, or you're sized up, or you're boxed up, or you're kind of cut up. And too often, actually, it's by other women. You're viewed as no longer being good enough, or often you're actually seen as a threat that's on the lurk now for another woman's husband, or you're no longer part of the marriage club. And of course, you can't get back in there unless you remarry. And I've personally experienced all of this, and I know the many women that I've supported navigating painful separations and divorces have also experienced this. And I believe that this stigma is still so alive because of that vow that, we make to stick with each other for better or for worse. And so there's just so much work to be done here too. You have to let yourself feel every single one of those ugly feelings. The feelings of if there was any betrayal or anger, or if there was any lies or any withholding of intimacy or sadness or grief and so on. And there's so much that really needs to be unraveled through a separation and divorce, especially if you have tied much of your self-worth and your identity to that relationship and to that marriage. So this is my first segment of the divorce series, which will probably be a 4 or 5 part series. I'm unsure yet. I hope what I've shared today has been incredibly supportive and insightful, and I hope that my words have touched your heart. Wherever you are right now, whether you feel you are deep in a dark pit, and I have been there, and maybe you can't see the light right now, I really want to remind you today of your strength and your great power as a woman. No matter where you are right now in your life, you will always have the capacity to pull yourself out of the dark, always. And I want to leave you with this beautiful quote from Yogi Bhajan, who brought Kundalini Yoga to the West today. If you do not accept your own dignity as a woman, all external trappings shall mean nothing. It has nothing at all to do with any man or with any relationship. Once you accept your own dignity, the whole world will come to you. So there you have it. And please, I'd love to hear from you. Did this episode support you today? What would you like me to share on this topic? Thank you so much for listening. And if you know of anybody that really needs to listen to this episode today, I would love if you could send it their way. They might just need to receive these words. Thank you.